if you know you're going to a networking event, how would you prepare for that networking event, and how do you follow up, Ruth, with the connections that you've made afterwards?
Yeah. I remember a time, actually, I was going to a dinner, and it was a seated event, and probably early enough in my career, I took a photograph of who was going to be at my table, and then I went away to try and understand where they would be coming from. I didn't know in advance who would be at the table, and I was sitting beside a managing partner of another professional services firm, and he was saying, "How do you do that, Ruth?" And I said, "Look, it's very simple. This is what I do." I think to your earlier point, why are you attending it, what you want to get out of it, and absolutely do your research in terms of the content, the speakers. If you can find out who's attending, all the better. Simple stuff, though, I think with people, who doesn't love to hear their name? So when you are introduced to somebody, I have to repeat it in my head a few times, but I always use that person's name. It's personal. People love to hear their name. Ask them questions, and really listen. There's a great article, I think it's in the Time magazine this week, and the front cover of the Time is just zip it. Like, how many of us really actively listen when we're in conversation? Think about the leaders down through the political ages. I might think of some of American presidents who come to mind, but they made the person who's in front of them the most important person when they were engaging with them. Do the same when you're speaking with somebody. Really try to understand where they're coming from, and be curious about them. I think we often tend to rush in, interrupt, want to show our knowledge. This is the human condition. But when you listen to somebody, really actively listen, then you can make a very deep connection in that moment. Simple stuff, but done well, is very powerful.
That's interesting when you say make that a simple connection, and that probably makes it easier for the follow-up, so that you can actually follow back up. If you've made a connection, if you know that you've got something in common, you can refer back to it. You can share an article that you've seen that you might find of interest to them. And Sue, I see that you've raised your hand. Have you got anything you'd like to add?
Well, I just think even taking a step back and saying, just overall, if you have a list of people and everybody from your family, your colleagues, it's really using everybody as your network. So there are referrals, believe it or not, if you're going to a soccer game with your daughter or son, to, and talking to parents, to your, as well as going to an event, or even if I always say when I'm going to a cocktail party, I can't wait to see what I get out of it other than a great drink, but to really find some connections there and really utilize that. Understand that elevators, you have to have your elevator speech, no matter where you're going, that too. Don't lose an opportunity for a referral, because that soccer parent might know the CEO of a company that you think you're a perfect fit for. So I think that really going at networking in every aspect, online, in person, professionally, join those organizations is really, and as Ruth said, I still remember the CEO of one of my companies said he always plans where he was going to sit, because he wouldn't go to a meeting if he didn't get something out of it. And he wanted to ensure he was going to get something out of a meeting.
Thank you, Sue. I think we've touched a little bit on what we can do. We've also touched a little bit on what not to do. Sue, do you have anything else that you want to add about like what not to do when you're an in-person networking events?
No, I think we've covered just about
enough on that. Okay, that's perfect. Now, lots of questions coming in on this topic. Everyone wants to know, how do I network with executive search consultants? I mean, that's the big question that a lot of people, you can see it coming in the Q&A. I'll just put that out there that actually for those of you that are members of BlueSteps, you actually have access to the directory of all the members of AESC and all of the consultants. So that will help you keep that in the back of your mind as we listen to the panel as they explain more about how you should actually have a targeted approach and not a free-for-all approach as you reach out to search consultants. So let me start now with you, Ruth. what should I consider when I'm building and nurturing a relationship with executive recruiters? I mean, there's so many questions coming in. How can I connect with you? How do I do it? So what should they consider when building the relationship?
Yeah, I think, you know, wherever your kind of specialty arises, I know we've some specialty firms here on the panel, making sure you're targeting the right audiences. And if you're more generalist, obviously doing that. So that's simple stuff. You know, I think retained search firms, we're always interested to hear people's point of view and gain insights. I think, you know, if you're approached for a role or an opportunity and it's absolutely not for you, still engage with the search firm and help them try and navigate a path to the source of truth, whoever that person might be in the world. I think that's being helpful is sort of to a search firm is always going to stand you in good stead. People remember that, certainly in the search industry, generally they take note of that in terms of people who are helpful to them. You know, if I think about the relationships I've built over the years with candidates, they've become candidates placed, some have become clients. So it's a circle of life. Things don't stay static. Again, kind of back to the previous point that a relationship is an ever evolving thing. And again, being helpful, staying connected, sharing insights, you know, connecting other people, they are all great ways of building a relationship with a search firm. And search firms are also looking to kind of also gather insights. If you are somebody who could help a search firm convene an event or, you know, doing things like that is also very interesting, I guess, Claire. But it should be a mutually beneficial, respectful relationship in its purest form. You know, start from that kind of level of respect, really.
Okay, well, thank you, Ruth, for that. And Sue, I'm going to go over to you because you're on the West Coast. And are you seeing anything different when it comes to networking with executive search consultants and building a relationship with them?
I don't think there's anything different, but I do always, if people have used search and they know their consultants, I think they know you. So go back to them first. They know you, and I'll always say they owe you because you worked with them before. So that's the first person that you're probably going to want to network with, is somebody that knows you from having done a search with them or their company. And then I think we get I get a lot of requests, not only from my search profession, but my alumni organization, from other clubs or things that I'm affiliated with Girl Scouts with. And so I find that people will find me different ways. And I believe that Ruth said earlier, when you have a lot of searches going on, you really are heads down, for your client, just like any of you in the audience, when you're working, you're really focused. So just, you might not get a call back right away, but I think we all pay it forward and play it forward and say, if I invest in this person, sometime, and especially if the person gives what we call source and gives some ideas for a search, who might be good. If it's not you for a search and there's some outreach, that really, really goes a long way in the industry. So I would say that.
Thank you, Sue, for that. We're getting lots of questions about increasing visibility in the search community. Actually, one way is all of the member firms of AESC, they all actually have access to BlueSteps and they see the candidates that are in the BlueSteps. So that's a little encouragement for you to just explore more about BlueSteps, and if you'd like to be part of that candidate pool that's in BlueSteps. But Claire, how can I increase my visibility to the search community? Any tips?
Well, I think Ruth and Sue have covered some of the basics just around being, open to help and support consultants in their search work. So even if you're not right for that opportunity, still take the call. And I think that there are things that you can do proactively to get known ahead of time, if I can put it that way, right? So clearly, what happens in the retained search world is that we're mandated by our clients to, go and see what the market is in a particular industry sector. For us, if we're looking for a chief legal officer in insurance, my team will go and map that market, and that will mean that they were looking for candidates that they will want to speak to. And it may be that you don't get into that map because you're not in that insurance community, for example. But what I would say is that doesn't mean that you shouldn't at some point connect with that consultant. And when they are not busy, head down, fulfilling that mandate, set up a time and have a call with them. Have a call with the people that are doing some of that research, and just explain what it is that you are seeking to achieve and what it is that you're wanting to do. And when the time is right, what we all have in this world is that sort of internal Rolodex of, oh yeah, I spoke to Claire, a few months ago. She'd be really good for this opportunity, or let me go and speak to her. So I think it is about being open and curious ahead of time, right? That if you are curating your career, always be open to what is happening on that market. Share those insights. As Ruth said, it is about, how can I help you? How can I help you today? I'm not looking to move. So that allows you to pay into that to that account. Then when you need to debit it, you've already created some of that opportunity. Now, I think if you're at the start of your career, that's going to be a little bit harder, right? But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't start to, again, comment on some of their posts on LinkedIn. Use your social media presence to get some of that visibility. Ruth mentioned it earlier in terms of what you can do in your LinkedIn profile, where you can turn on that little button that says open to. Because when that search is done, if you're open to a conversation, you're going to get further up that list. So there are many things that you can do to increase that visibility. And again, it's always about having those conversations, those network of networks. Sue said earlier that it's not necessarily when you're looking for a role that you should be, only focused on that. You should be focused on your career at all times of your career, right? So I think that your visibility to a recruiter is an ongoing action that you need to own, because there will be times when that will come back manyfold when you are in a process, or that you're being considered for a process because of the work that you did before that process started.
Thank you, Claire. Ruth, do you have anything else you'd like to add there?
I mean, I love people who give me a fast no. When I'm working with a client and we are thinking about particular leaders or next gen leaders, and it's just not the right time, obviously that's really helpful. And then of course we try to persuade them to do something else. I think probably, we're in such a privileged position in this profession. We're in this kind of cross section of, silent information. People trust us with their most intimate kind of career story, salary information in some parts of the world. So it's a really privileged position. And then if you think about the work that we do, and we're bringing the best people in front of an opportunity, only one person can get that role. And so many of our conversations are unfortunately turn away or turn down. And I still have to psych myself up 20 years later to do these. And that's a good thing, because I think if I were to lose that, I shouldn't be in this business. But, in those conversations, it's kind of a crucible moment, both for me and the candidate, and how maybe I handle that and how the candidate handles that ultimate, which might be perceived as a rejection. So if you can handle those well, that's helpful in building the relationship with me for the next time. Again, it's sort of a human trait, I suppose, Claire, but you know, those conversations are not always, you know, easy or pleasant. And if we can both work to get to another level of a relationship post that, that's really helpful to a search consultant who probably doesn't want to deliver the bad news, right? In truth, they'd be the other two maybe things I would add.
Thank you, Ruth, for that.